Hi, everyone. This is Derek from the editing booth. Look, so Corinne and I got most of the way through this episode before we actually realized we didn't lay out what we're actually talking about or what it is. So, this episode, we're actually going to be going over some of Sandman. See, that's my favorite comic book, and it's one that Corinne is reading right now. So, I figured we would do some check ins and just talk about like where she is in it and what she likes about it. So, if you haven't read Sandman, this is probably not the best way to be introduced to it. If you've watched the show, it might actually be a pretty good way to get a little bit more into the comic books because there are some differences here and there. And I will say, Corinne has not watched the TV show, whereas I've watched some of the TV show and I've read all of the book. But yeah, so I'm going to take a clip from later in the episode where we discuss what Sandman actually is, and I'm going to drop it in here. And that's it. Sorry about that, and hope you enjoy the show.
So, Sandman is basically it is about an eternal being who is the Dream Lord. There's a lot of different realms. It's not just heaven. It's not just hell. There's a whole world where all dreams exist and are run and developed and all that stuff. They have a lot of properties to them that involve characters. Death is its own character. It's not just like Lucifer himself. It's like you know desire is its own kind of world. Any basic concept essentially has its own kind of realm. So it's kind of like people are independent, but in a weird way, their feelings and their things that happen in their life are kind of controlled by these various gods. Um, so really cool. And it just focuses on the Dream Lord. You can either call him Dream or Morpheus. He's got another name in one. He goes by a lot of names because he's lived forever and ever and ever. But he goes through the world kind of regaining balance after he's been held prisoner for almost 70 years. So if you're gone for 70 years and you run a huge concept of life, things are obviously going to get messed up. So a lot of the beginning is him kind of regaining some balance, claiming some items that were his. Um, and then after that, it's kind of like, what do I do now? Okay, well, there's still things that need to get fixed, and he kind of fixes them.
Okay, with that out of the way, enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to Comically Pedantic, where we take a detailed look at the complicated concepts, characters, and history of comic book culture. I'm your host, Eric L. Chase, and joining me again on this episode is the wonderful Corinne Levy.
It's a me, and not a Mario.
Okay, so this is going to be a weird one. I have no script, I have no plan.
Neither of us do. We're just gonna talk about shit.
I originally was, when we sat down to do this, I was going to actually put together a set of notes to go over what we're eventually going to be covering.
Yeah, and then I said, let's not do that planned thing. Let's do an unplanned thing of me just fangirling at a thing.
Which I am totally on board for. And
Yeah.
you might hear my dog playing with a toy in the background. I'm going to try to do my best to eliminate that, but he's in a very playful mood right now. It was the moment I hit record, he decided to dig through his toy chest to dig out anything that made noise.
Yeah. I like his little squeaks in the background though. It's fun.
I mean, I like it because I like that he's having fun.
Yeah. But right now, we're trying to have fun. And that requires surround sound silence.
He does that thing where he's like, I love it and it's my new favorite thing. And then after a week, he's like, I will destroy this.
Yeah. My cat's new favorite thing is a tunnel that I bought him for $4 at Five Below. And it's great.
That's very similar. Like we have two tunnels, and one of them I think came from IKEA, and it is
good place.
It was like $5-6, and it was the easiest thing to you just throw it on the floor, instant fun for the next 3 years.
That's fun. And then I got him a fish that has catnip in it. And so he was playing with Mr. Fish today. It was a good time. Very good time.
We have a banana for Havoc. That is his favorite toy.
Mm.
And he will wrap himself around it like a koala, and that he will just lay on the floor with it,
Oh, that's
cuddling
so
his
good
little
though.
banana.
I love that.
Okay. So before we get too far into anything, I
Yes.
guess I should ask, what's your bright spot?
Um, oh gosh, the fact that I got to finish the thing that we're talking about today. I got to finish book 1 of Sandman, which was very great, which we'll get into. This whole episode is pretty much like me explaining my bright spot. Uh,
That's good.
but I'm trying to think of what else. I love getting my cat new toys. So that's another thing. I love to spoil this little baby boy so much. He's such a precious little baby. And Mondays are always like my and his time together. That wasn't grammatically correct at all. This is our day together. So it's a little just like mother and son day, and it's very good. We love it. So yeah, good times. Good times all around.
I realized, like right before we started recording, there were a few things that were like running through my head,
Mhm.
and I guess they kind of work as a bright spot for me.
Yeah, do
Um,
share.
and it's just kind of it starts from a well, I it's gonna sound negative to start off with, but it led me to something that is a little bit more bright. And that's just I was watching this was like a week or two ago. I was
Mhm.
watching YouTube because I watch a lot of YouTube. I love
Sure.
YouTube. And I found myself just being so annoyed because almost everything that like I pulled up, people were being incredibly negative about just whatever. A
Yeah.
new Sonic the Hedgehog fan game is coming out. Let's tear it apart. There's
Oh.
like this thing's coming out. I remember like when Thor: Love and Thunder came out, people were talking about how much they hated it. I'm like, okay, you may not like it, but like maybe that's it's just not the movie for you. There's a lot of it that I liked. There's a lot of it I
Yeah.
didn't like, but overall, I thought it was fine. and
Overall, it's
uh,
just a movie.
right, and so like in seeing all of this and talking to other people and really like and actually talking to you and thinking about what where we're going to be coming at stuff, especially coming up
Yeah.
um, with some of what we have planned. I really wanted to focus on the good in things. I mean,
Absolutely.
I, 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 I ask you what your bright spot is, and I've made a point before about trying to focus on the good that is out there because there's a lot of negativity that weighs us all down. But
Yeah.
it's good to sort of re-up on that every so often and be like, oh yeah, I am trying to focus on the good in things. Like I like to
Yeah.
like things. Even stuff that I'm not a big fan of, there's something in it I'm sure that I like, you know.
Oh, for sure.
Having that realization and feeling like it giving myself a little bit of leeway to look at things and be like it's not that serious. It
Yeah.
feels like a weight off of my shoulders even though like I wasn't actually putting any pressure on myself for anything. I don't know how to
Yeah.
explain it other than
No, I think it's funny because it's kind of one of those things where it's like things that people arbitrarily like to like hate on, like in terms of like media, I guess. Like, I'm gonna bring it. I always bring it back to the Joel Schumacher Batman's, but I'm bringing it back again because that is the thing that people love to hate on. And like, I think for like a little bit, I was just like, oh, I guess these movies are bad. But then I was like, but why? Why are we so attracted to them? Why are we so attracted to like talking about them, even if it is like negative? Because it's like if you keep coming back to it, there has to be a thing that you're attracted to in it. And like for me, I found out easily. I was like, it's the colors. I love the colors and the camp. Like, and
oh yeah.
yes, There's definitely some, like we just watched Batman Forever, like, recently,
Oh,
like, we rewatched it, and there's definitely some, like, parts that make me kinda, like, cringe a little bit. I'm like, "Oh, I don't" like, "Nicole Kidman, what are you doing?" But then there's other scenes where I'm like, "This is so fun. I'm having the best time." And, like,
wait,
I
is that
think
the one where like Chris O'Donnell does the laundry, but he's doing it like
yes, he does the laundry and he, like, punches it dry. It's so good.
I
It's
love
so funny.
I
And
love
he's, like,
these
30
movies.
years old, but he's supposed to be, like, a college freshman or something, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"I love this movie." But it's like, it's stuff like that where it's like people are like, "Oh my god, it's so corny." It's like, "Yeah, it's supposed to be." Like, enjoy it for how it is. Like, you can
I
cringe
mean,
about it later.
there's a lot of like I love camp. Camp
Yeah,
is so much fun. And like, obviously there's different levels to which you can play with that and like how appropriate it is to whatever.
absolutely.
But any like the campier something is, usually the more fun I have with it.
Yeah, because you like it takes the edge off of like feeling like you have to take it seriously. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people forget that like not everything is meant to be like taken seriously and like, in like not to ironically not to be like in-depthly like research. Like some things are just meant to be fun and enjoy them and like talk about how much you love them. In depth
Well,
if
and
you
I
want
think
to.
even the
So,
things that are like just dumb entertainment, there's still a lot that goes into that. Like there's preparing
yeah.
something to be mindlessly just consumed. There's still a lot of prep work into that.
I had watched an episode about Albert Camus. He was like an absurdist, basically, because he was just like, nothing matters. Like, it all just happens and like all that stuff. But then people are like, but what's the meaning of it? It's like, well, there is no meaning. So I think to an extent, I sometimes am a bit of an absurdist with what I like to enjoy. I like to enjoy some
So
things that don't make sense or like like there's I feel like I kind of like a blend of things where like it makes a lit like things can be connected and like it's fun to have some deep meanings, but sometimes I also just like when nothing fucking matters and it's just like it's a whole big old explosion of weirdness. I like a lot of
my
that.
that actually I've gone through different I guess levels of dealing with depression and anxiety over my like adolescence to adulthood,
Mhm.
all sprinkled throughout. And a few of the times, what really like worked for me during all of that is realizing that things don't matter in the grand scheme
Yeah,
of things.
or just
There's
things are fucking crazy. It happens.
there's a level of nihilism that you can sort of have that I think helps with understanding who you are and where you are in things. So I'm a big Buffy and Angel fan, and
Sure,
there
yeah.
is like toward the end of Angel, there is a point where um the philosophy is really driven home, and it's sort of like if nothing really matters, if there's no grand scheme, if there is no heaven or hell, or if there's only hell,
Yeah.
and what you do doesn't matter so much, then all that matters are the things that you do, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, if there's no reward at the end of it, if you're just doing a good thing because you want to do a good thing, then that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't know a way to boil that down any like simpler, make it make more sense, but it makes sense in my brain.
That's good. That's all that matters. I think
Right.
it made sense. I Well, kind of going off of that mix of absurd yet somewhat connected, I think that's why I like Sandman so much. Like after book one, like because that's kind of what it is. It's just like you have this insane, like Neil Gaiman just created the most insane like dream worlds or realm, whatever. And like it is absolutely absurd, yet somehow I'm just like, yeah, this is feasible. Like, this is absolutely 100%. I'm so about it. Like, let's do it. Like, I think the first issue really does kind of set that scene. Because at first you're just like, what the hell is going on? And then after like 5 pages, you're like, you finally get onto this like weird, funky rhythm. And it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So like this is just supposed to be bizarre. And like I love it. I was super into it. And I think
So what was
that's yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
what was your like your first introduction? Like how did you come to Sandman?
How did I come to well, you had told me about and shout out to Derek, everybody. So you had told me about it, and honestly, I was like, yeah, I'll get to it. But typically, I am a person when people tell me to read things, I push it very far back. Like I'll
Yeah, I
keep
do
it
the
in the
same.
back of my mind, but it push it very far back. I'm like, I'll get to it. Um, and then I saw it was like free comic book day happened. And then boyfriend and I went to a different bookstore after the four of us had hung out because
Right.
we had all met up for this comic book day. I went to Books
Which
a
was a good
Million.
day.
It was a great day. I had a hoot and a half.
Yeah.
I have all of my cat sketches from those artists. It was a great time. So um, we went to Books a Million afterwards. So I was like, I
Right.
need more books. And I had found this cover of Sandman. And because this is an audio only medium, I will explain the cover. It's basically the most spooky man you've ever seen. He looks like he's out of like, he looks like a mix of like an emo David Bowie and Labyrinth. And like, it's great. I love that style. And he's surrounded by spooky cats,
Mhm.
which gave me very much like a good like Halloween kind of like Coraline vibe. And I was like, I need to
Well,
have
that
this
makes
book.
sense.
Well, and then I found out months in like I was halfway through this book and I had told a coworker, I was like, yeah, I'm reading Sandman. And he was like, oh yeah, like the guy who wrote Coraline. And I was like, what are you talking about? I for the longest time thought Coraline was written by a woman. It's not. It was written by Neil. Um
So
Shout out to Neil.
I don't know if you know this, but so when Neil Gaiman wrote Sandman stories,
Mhm.
he separated them into what he considered male and female stories. And I
Oh,
think he kind
interesting.
of does that when he writes, just in general. Like, this is
Yeah.
a male dominated story or a female dominated story. And I don't know how that really matters in terms of
Well, it's
storytelling.
interesting. You no, it's interesting you say that though because there is literally an issue in here. I cannot remember what it's called. I think it's like a story only told once or something like that. And these two men, a grandfather and his grandson, they go out into the middle of the desert and the whole like intro to it is being like, oh, some stories are only told like once in a lifetime, and some stories are told millions of times to children all over the world. Some stories are specifically told, you know, by
Is this
women
the one
to
about not?
women. It's
Is this the one
about
about?
it's about dreams first love that gets
Yes.
rejected.
It's called Tales in the Sand.
Yeah, that's what it is. I love that you said it as soon as I found the page. I love it. Um, Yeah, and so, like, I mean, he definitely does just say that outright, that he's like, some stories are meant for only certain ears, said in certain ways, in particular styles, which I thought was pretty cool. I don't know if I fully agree with that, because I am a person who likes to hear all different stories from all different kinds of people, to try and understand them. Perhaps that's me thinking about it too hard, because I still had a delightful time with this story that was told man to man. Um, I find it really cool how Neil can just it's almost like he is just like a professional mythology writer.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
he
really
wrote
cool.
he like recently did like a Norse mythology sort of retold.
he
book.
wrote American Gods too, I think,
Yeah, so
and like Good
I was actually
Omens.
going to mention that
Okay,
my favorite book and my favorite comic book are both written by Neil Gaiman. And I think I don't think like he's not the best author I have ever read.
right.
He's not my favorite author, but he just happens to have written two of my favorite things.
Yeah, that's fair.
And that's American Gods and Sandman. And I
Mhm.
think they very much go together.
Yeah, I think what I really like, because it's like it is very like, again, it feels very like mythology to me, which is a thing that I
Mm.
already like. I'm reading like Song of Achilles right now to put in perspective, and I've already read Circe or Cersei,
Mhm.
whatever however people want to pronounce it.
Yeah.
So I love stuff like that, and I like how he writes these like eternal people. That's like a huge thing that I really like, because I feel like a lot of times when you look at Greek mythology, and sometimes like when you look at kind of like Christian stories and things like that, the eternal people, like your gods, your goddesses, your whatevers, they're all very petty, and they
Yeah.
all put a lot of feeling into what they're, choosing. Like I I'm reading Song of Achilles right now, so like Helen has just been stolen from, you know, Menelaus. I think it's Menelaus. And all
Yeah, I
the
was trying to
gods
pull
are
the name and I couldn't.
like picking sides. And it's like, you know, because so and so is like on this team, like this person's picking another person. But with Sandman, it's very much just like, I'm here and this is my job. I will do my job until my job no longer exists. And I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but I have to do this because this is my job. And I just think that that neutrality was so refreshing, cuz it made me like them even more. Like typically like the character Death especially is very just like, I'm here to do my job. I clock in, I clock out, and me clocking out is just when time stops and there's nothing else to die. Um
And
and she's just so
it's
good at her
interesting you
job.
say that because I feel my reading of Sandman and Death, which uh
Well,
once
cuz
you
you've
get
read more than I have. Yeah. But
once you get at least close to the ending of Sandman, I have the Death collection.
mhm.
Some of it is stuff from Sandman, some of it is she had her own series, like
Yeah.
short stories. Um, my reading of her is she's someone who cares very deeply. And with Morpheus, the Sandman,
Yeah.
I feel he is someone who cares very deeply, but he puts his job, like his role, above everything else.
Yeah.
And she does too, but she's, I guess, more giving. Like she allows herself to feel these things, whereas I feel like he tries to hide how much he feels.
I think he
Um,
just doesn't know how to feel.
he's an awkward person.
And I love that. He should be.
Yeah.
It's great. I think it's fantastic. But I don't know. I think it's like, maybe it's just like a different feeling. Because again, a lot of times you see very like emotion forward gods and goddesses
Yeah.
and all this stuff. I love how they do their emotion, because they might be very strong and they might be very passionate about their jobs. Like they clearly are. Like Dream, here's a heck of a lot about the Dream Kingdom, making sure that people can all sleep easier how they're supposed to. I like how much he cares about the balance of things, and I I feel like you can just really tell that Death is very passionate about her part in life, and I think that's really cool. But again, there's no weird alliances. People just get like, I get why you're doing this. Like,
Mhm.
because it's your job. Because this is your whole existence. This is your whole point of being a thing. And I just think that's really, again, just really refreshing. Um, I think the only time you really see that kind of pettiness of like, and like revengey kind of stuff is from Desire, who
I was
I
thinking
just
the
want to
exact
see more of, because But I think it's cool that like that makes sense because that's
Mm,
what desire is. I like that they took these like very broad concepts and personified them. Because I feel like that's where like again your Greek mythology. I'm going to go back to that because that's what I'm reading right now. Like a lot of them are fueled by that desire. So it's cool to see it kind of like personified in the 80s. It's fun.
there's the further you get into Sandman, and I'm trying to think of the right way to word this so that I'm not telling you anything. um, it is Neil Gaiman definitely is aware of um what he has created and how different it and similar it is to Greek mythology.
Oh, I think you
Um,
can tell that from the first book. I mean, like, again, because the way he writes and the way like plot lines happen. Um, he includes one of the muses towards the end of this book. Um,
Calliope, right?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah, Calliope. That was a really good story. That was really cool.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, no, I think you can 100% see it because it's like all these like eternal beings have these weird, vague relationships to each other. Like you do have a whole set siblings that are
yeah.
eternal, and then you have these kind of like they have some like they have Cain and Abel. Oh my god, I have to talk about Cain and Abel. But like I know they have like the nods. Like it's kind of like a better. I liked Supernatural a lot, and they brought a lot of Christian into it.
Yeah.
But this I feel like was a more fun way of doing that. I don't think they're comparable things, but if I had to compare, I think this I liked this a little more. Um, because I felt like they had some more complexity. I like that. I gotta talk about Cain and Abel. 'Cause holy crap! It's in like the second issue. Also, this is gonna be the most chaotic podcast episode we probably have. I'm letting you
I
know
keep
now. I've gone
I
on
keep
so many
thinking of
tangents.
like I keep thinking of things where I'm like I want to ask this, but um I'm letting you go because I'm following I'm following along with what you're saying. It might be a little confusing. I mean, hopefully no one that's listening to this um has not read Sandman or at the very
Okay, yeah.
least seen the show.
If you haven't read, I keep forgetting there's a show too. If you have not read Sandman, here's a belated synopsis of at least book one, and I will be able to tell it at least okay because I just read it, and I'm gonna try and not to spoil it for you. Kind of hard to
I should
spoil it
cut this and
because
put it at the front of the episode.
yeah, that would probably be a good idea. But are we really gonna do that? I don't know. I don't edit these. So Sandman is basically it is about an eternal being who is the Dream Lord. There's a lot of different realms. It's not just heaven. It's not just hell. There's a whole world where all dreams exist and are run and developed and all that stuff. They have a lot of properties to them that involve characters. Death is its own character. It's not just like Lucifer himself. It's like you know desire is its own kind of world. Any basic concept essentially has its own kind of realm. So it's kind of like people are independent, but in a weird way, their feelings and their things that happen in their life are kind of controlled by these various gods. Um, so really cool. And it just focuses on the Dream Lord. You can either call him Dream or Morpheus. He's got another name in one. He goes by a lot of names because he's lived forever and ever and ever. But he goes through the world kind of regaining balance after he's been held prisoner for almost 70 years. So if you're gone for 70 years and you run a huge concept of life, things are obviously going to get messed up. So a lot of the beginning is him kind of regaining some balance, claiming some items that were his. Um, and then after that, it's kind of like, what do I do now? Okay, well, there's still things that need to get fixed, and he kind of fixes them. I think that explained it okay, but yeah, it ties a lot to like kind of all different mythologies. You have kind of a Greek reference every once in a while with like one of the muses, which we either just mentioned or will mention because I don't know if we're actually going to edit this. You do get some Christian references because there is like, you meet Lucifer, and like Beelzebub, fun times. You meet Cain and Abel. You meet a lot of different characters throughout these different like issues and stuff. It's very cool. Also because he's eternal, you get to see different timelines. It's not always just focused in the 80s. Sometimes you get to go back in time and see like a cool little there was a one shot issue that was really cool about a man in the Renaissance who's like, I could just not die. Like, I'm just gonna choose not to die. And so we
He's
made
one of my
and
favorite
it's so
characters.
good. I loved that issue. But basically Sandman's just like, all right, you won't be touched by death. I'll meet you in 100 years at this spot, see how it goes. And they talk every 100 years and like, ah, such a good issue. Love it a lot. Yeah. You go through it is kind of all one connected story, but I like that there is also just moments where it's like, here's an issue just about a little character deep dive. You get to know a little more about like who is the Sandman or like who is
Mhm.
a person that has been touched in their life by him. I think that's really cool. Um, I just really like. I'm gonna now go back to Cain and Abel because I have to talk about it or else I will forget. I'm a very chaotic podcast host who didn't take notes. I just have this book in front of me and I love it. Don't be
I
mad.
have notes pulled up. So as we go
Okay,
through,
great.
there are some things that I was going to mention, but we can get to Cain and Abel because it kind of ties into some of what I was going to
Yeah,
say to you.
cool. They're like some of the first two people that you meet. Once Dream has kind of broken out of his like imprisonment. Um, to kind of just see where the world's at. He goes to talk to them, and they are the most interesting two brothers in the world. Um, Obviously, like everybody knows, if you ever read anything vaguely like a Bible, who Cain and Abel are. Cain kills Abel, first murder. What a time! I never went to church, but I know it, so I'm just going to assume a lot of other people know it. And usually, like I feel like a lot of people are just like, oh, like this is like some just gruesome biblical story, but like in Sandman, they are just like also eternal beings that are just running a little part of like the universe, essentially. Just kind of all these like weird little happenings. They're like, we run the stories of that. And I think that's really cool. They kind of start off as this very like slapstick duo where it's just like, Kane, please don't kill me again. That would really suck. And Kane's just like, nah, bitch, I'm gonna kill you again. And like at first you're like, oh haha, this is silly. But then like pages will go on. And then Abel is eventually like alone at one point, and he had just been given like a pet gargoyle. And he's just like,
Goldie.
yeah, Goldie. But he names him secretly Irving because he
Yeah.
wanted it to be. Oh, and he made me cry because he was just like, once upon a time, they were like two. He like basically tells Irving slash Goldie a story of, and it's very clearly him just wanting to have a good relationship with his brother.
Mhm.
And like, he just wants to be happy. And you would never see that in the Bible. And I was just like, oh, I'm so glad that like this person has more feelings and isn't just like the person who got killed. And I feel like a lot of like background characters to huge stories in like mythical culture get that. And I think that's really I also think just a lot of background DC characters get more depth from this. And I really like that.
Yeah.
But you had a question.
Well, okay, so there are a few things running through my mind.
Sure.
A quick aside, I will tell you, I've been watching the show,
Oh, okay, good.
which I was excited about when they announced.
Okay.
I saw the first trailer and I thought, this looks awful. And I was ready for it to be one of the worst things I've ever seen.
Right.
And then it came out and I watched the first episode and I was so like taken aback at how well they adapted the basically the entire first episode is the first issue of the comic book.
That's great. That's
And
cool.
they do it with a little bit more context for different things. So Neil Gaiman is part of the writing staff. He helped create the show.
Yeah.
So in doing so, they made a lot of changes. And it's something that I've texted friends about who have read and some who have just watched the show, where I've said it is simultaneously one of the shows that is the most faithful to the comic book while also
Yeah.
making so many changes. And I think each of the changes makes sense. They're there not to change the story, but to make the story better. Like to
That's
give
cool.
more context to things or to um, tell the story in a different medium in a way that makes sense for that medium, you
That's
know?
cool. I saw one little clip, and it's in the book. It's when you first meet Death, and it's their like little
Yeah.
conversation in a park. And I was like, "Oh my god, it's so accurate." That's
Right.
cool. So I
So
might get to watching it. I'm a little nervous so far just because I don't know how far the season goes. And I bought
I
the second book, so I
I'm
think I
not
want to
very
read more of
far
the second.
into the show. So I can tell you I am I think like 5 or 6 episodes in
Okay.
and we are still firmly within Preludes and Nocturnes. So
Okay.
like he's still gathering his uh
His tools.
his things, yeah, things that were taken from him.
Okay.
But it's interesting. And now, one thing I was going to point out, Austin's been watching it with me. I
Yeah.
actually, after watching the first episode, she was asleep because she had just gotten home from work or something like that.
Mhm.
And I literally shut it off and said, I will not watch any more of this because it was so good. I have to ask her if she wants to watch it with me. So
Yeah.
that, because I don't want to get all the way through it and be like, you don't understand. It's so good. I'm going to give her the opportunity, and she has so far really liked it.
That's good.
The episode that introduces Cain and Abel,
Yeah.
that also introduces the gargoyles, they change quite a bit about
Oh.
some stuff. Not about Cain and Abel specifically, but there's one big thing that changes,
Right.
and it happens like maybe 10 minutes into the episode. And it
Okay.
was enough, again, like 10 minutes into the episode, she was crying for like the next half of the episode.
No.
So
I'm not
it's
ready.
it's quite they do it really well by making
Yeah.
these changes. They tweak it just enough to make it work for what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now, with Cain and Abel as like what we're talking about right now, they are characters that are not exclusive to the Sandman, nor original to the Sandman series. I'm not sure how much of that you're aware of. Like,
They were
I know
in
in
a different like little series, weren't they? Like a little horror series or something from
right,
DC?
so the House of Secrets and the House of Mysteries were two different things that ran through DC,
Yeah.
and often, like Tales from the Crypt, how they would have like people introduce things. That was kind of their role in a lot
Yeah.
of these horror books. um they're not the only characters that were taken from stuff. So there actually was a previous Sandman series starring
Oh.
a much more traditional superhero called the Sandman, and he wore like a gas mask and ran around. It was really
You
interesting.
know what? They pay homage to that in the first issue, I think.
At some point during the first few issues, trying to remember exactly when, they do introduce that character.
Yes.
And like, and then there's Sandman goes to hell and he meets Etrigan the demon. That's a famous DC
Him I
character.
remembered. I don't remember where I was listening or like who I was talking to about Entrican the Demon, but he came. I think I was talking to my boyfriend about it, and I saw him, and I was like, I know that guy. I don't know why I know. And like Constantine shows up as well. Um, Constantine shows up before Entrican, and yeah, that also was like now I have to read Hellblazer. So like my list keeps adding now because I've read this. Um, they also towards the end more DC references. They brought in Elemental Girl, um,
Oh yes.
or Urena Blackwell. So good. I think that was like such a good ending to book one. It has no Sandman in it at all. It's just
Yeah.
this woman and death. And it was such like a heartbreaking piece of just like this woman so sick of herself. My cat's coming in. Hi, Oliver. He might meow, just a heads up. But it was just such a good solo piece. And I thought it was also just a really good way to end because the way that that issue ends is both like very heartbreaking, but you're also like weirdly happy for the person. And I feel like that is a lot of what the theme is here. And I liked that. I thought it was really good. So I'm trying not to spoil it. Like I'm trying not to say what each issue is exactly, but also without being super vague. It's very difficult. Podcasting is hard. It does bring a lot of kind of underrated DC characters. And I liked that a lot.
Right.
John Constantine maybe isn't the most underrated because he does have like a lot of books, but it's not like he's like Batman
Well,
or Superman kind of deal.
I don't know. So okay, around the time that Sandman was starting, it was um pretty deep into Alan Moore's revamp of the Swamp Thing,
Oh,
and
okay.
right around the time that Hellblazer as a comic book was getting started. In fact, I think it's like issue 8 of Hellblazer is where that issue of Sandman takes place.
Oh, okay.
It's like somewhere really close, like to the beginning of Hellblazer, is where that first Sandman issue takes place.
Yeah, that's like the third issue in
Yeah.
this.
Mm-hmm.
That one was really cool because it's just them trying to find like the first tool, and it's just like this poor woman just gets stuck with it. She has
Oh
no
yeah.
idea what she's gotten herself into. And it's a shame it's like Constantine's friend or more than friend. That's a
Yeah.
bit ambiguous. But see that's what I mean. It's like it ends and it goes sadly, but in a way like peace is brought in the end and you do again get that neutralness from Sandman. It's like, yes, it sucks that this is happening, but I'm gonna make it as painless as possible because I
Right.
still have to fix this and I still need my things back. Um, that I really,
So I don't know. Okay,
enjoyed.
there is Matthew the Raven. That character is not new to Sandman either.
Oh, the Raven! I love
Yes.
the little Raven. He was so
So
cool.
Matthew was a supporting character in the Swamp Thing series.
Oh, okay.
And I like him better as a Raven. he's
I
he's
liked him
not
as a Raven.
he's not a terrible person. He is a complicated individual in the Swamp Thing series. And like I guess spoiler for this incredibly old comic book series, but Matthew dies in Swamp Thing. and he
And then
dies
yeah.
while he's dreaming. So
So his redemption is him living in the dream world,
right,
basically,
and
is
it's
what you're
basically,
told in this.
and that's the contract that is made with Dream, is because he died dreaming, he is allowed to live on as a raven, as his personal raven.
Yeah. I think that's really neat.
Matthew as a raven is a much more interesting character to me because it's a person trying, or a creature trying to do better in like this
Yeah.
second chance that they're given.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's kind of a lot of that second chance trying harder. And there's also just a lot of really good circle backs in this book.
Mhm.
So like in the first issue, um I might just talk about the plot a little bit so it makes sense what I'm about to say.
Yeah,
In the first issue is the Sandman getting captured by this cult. Um,
Roderick
they're trying,
Burgess.
yeah, they're trying to kidnap Death, and so that they can have like all this power because they have a hold of Death. But instead, they accidentally get the Dream Lord, and they hold on to him for, I said it earlier, but like 70 years, like a whole human lifetime essentially.
Mhm.
And they do this in a way where it's like you get jump cuts of the cult and kidnapping, and you never see Dream until like the very end, but they're trying to like talk to him and like trying to interrogate him and stuff. And then they jump to other people, just citizens in the world, just like living. You get like a soldier in World War I. You get like a man living, I think he lives in the Bahamas. You get this British woman, her name's Unity Kincaid, and it's all like them sleeping. And they all have their own, one of them sleeping really sound, one of them having trouble, all different kinds of styles, them trying to dream, not dreaming, struggling, whatever. And then once Dream is captured, I mean, you don't know it's him until later, but these people's lives get affected. Either they become like the extremist form of their sleeping mode, or they can't sleep again. And you get really connected to these people, um, especially Unity Kincaid, where, because, like, she's raped, she has a baby, and she's asleep the whole time. She lives like she ends up in a senior home, but she's asleep the whole time. And then finally, when the Dream Lord wakes up and is, out, or not wakes up, he's released. He breaks free. All these people get back to normal. Like one of them was so affected. The man who lived in like the Bahamas, he was so affected he became mute because he just like couldn't sleep, couldn't do anything. He was just like, I'm not gonna talk anymore. And then finally, when he's like brought back, he's able to speak. Unity Kincaid is finally allowed to wake up, and she's like, "Oh my god, I've missed a whole lifetime." And your heart breaks for these people, and then you don't hear about them for like 10 sessions. Um, and then finally, like some of them, one or two of them come back. Unity Kincaid comes back, and in like the coolest way. um, and I won't get too much into it because I don't want to spoil it. But she actually becomes very important, and she comes back in a way that it's almost like she's trying to make up for the time she lost. Like she's trying to get her own sense of redemption in a different way from like, Matthew the Raven. Um and that was like very, very fun to see that get like satisfied. Um there's also a man, I think his, oh god, I can't remember his name. I want to say it's Greg. I want to say it's Gregory so bad. He's the man that hangs out with, he used to be a dream and then he was.
Oh, Fiddler's Green.
Fiddler's
Um,
Green, but his human name was like Gregory or something.
yeah,
He
I'm
has
trying to
his
think of
own
it
kind of
right
like
now.
little, I gotta find it because it's gonna drive me bananas. It's crazy, but he's so good and I love him. But
Yeah,
basically
I'm
his whole thing is he gets his own second chance. He tries to make things right.
Gilbert.
Um, Gilbert. Oh my god, that's what it was. Love Gilbert. Gilbert has his own sort of like redemption thing where it's like because like Dream has been gone for 70 plus years, like a lot of people in the dream world have scattered, tried to do their own thing, whether it's good or bad, chaotic or neutral, whatever. Um, I feel like he was one of the most neutral kind of partings, but then he does come back and like accept responsibility for certain things.
Mhm.
Um, and he tries to redeem himself for doing that, and I think that's really great. You get a lot of that, and I love that. Shows that
Um,
not people are also bad. People are trying to do better things.
but okay, so I guess before I say anything, I'm kind of curious of where you are in the series because I don't want to ruin anything. Um,
Yeah,
so I kind of want to before I say anything, I want to know
yeah.
about like what's happening where you are in the series.
All right, I'm gonna just say from this point on, so this podcast makes more sense. From this
Mhm.
point on, this is a spoiler alert for all of
Yeah,
book
yeah,
one.
it's going to be really hard to
Because
talk about this book without
I
spoiling
was
things.
trying so hard, and then I was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I
Yeah.
cannot contain it. We just need to chat about this. Um, so at this point, Dream has gotten all of his tools back. Um,
Mhm.
he got them pretty early on. He got them all back because he does the whole thing with Constantine finding his like sandbag, and then he has the fight battle kind of wits with that one demon in hell for his helmet, and then he has to fight John D to get his ruby back,
Dr.
but he ends up like
Destiny.
break
Yeah.
Doctor Destiny. What a cool character! Uh
A great character spinning out of a very boring character because he was just a straight up supervillain and not that interesting until
he just goes unhinged, and it's so crazy to watch because there's moments where you like really feel for him, and then he just murders a woman, and you're like, oh my god, he's
oh okay,
terrifying.
so an interesting thing now my introduction to Sandman is a little weird because I was reading comic books for a long time and I never
Right.
picked up Sandman. I was very firmly within the superhero universe and just kind of wanted to stay there. And there used to be a magazine called Wizard. Wizard was a fun, if albeit sometimes and mostly silly magazine that just talked a lot about comic books, what was coming up. They did like little fun things,
Right.
and I loved it. I
Hmm.
got Wizard every month when it came out, super into it. And I remember there was a Halloween issue and they counted down their like creepiest moments in comics. And one of the top hits for that was this issue of the Sandman where John D
With the diner.
walks into a diner and basically holds it hostage for well, like
For
an
a whole
entire
day.
day. Yeah,
It's 24 hours, and it takes you through every hour of what happens. And it
yeah.
starts off kind of just like mild. You get to know everyone in the diner. That's another crazy full circle. Which I will get to after I talk about this freaking diner. But it just slowly becomes more and more unhinged, and like you learn more about the people in the diner and how like messed up their lives are, some of them, or how wholesome some of them are, and then they all just are done like within 24 hours, and he didn't really do anything. It's just him influencing people. Like, I don't remember him actually putting hands on people to
Right.
like
No, it's just
do the
the
thing. It's
subtle
just him, and it's just the
yeah.
ruby and like the subtle influence that he has on these people. And it was such a crazy way to show like power and just like it that whole issue I feel like could be like a 90s horror movie. Like I feel like it could have been.
My upon reading about this creepy moment in comics,
Mhm.
that is what made me go, yeah, I have to read this series. And I still didn't for another year or two, just
Yeah.
because this was this was a little bit before it was so easy to buy digital comics and
Yeah.
so I actually borrowed, my friend had the entire Sandman collection. I borrowed the entire
Right.
thing from him and read it just nonstop. But that being said, also that specific issue of the comic book is the episode where I am in the show, and
Oh
it
my
is
god.
so interesting. Austin kept it, like, we actually shut it off halfway through because we had to do something.
Right.
So we kind of we're breaking a little bit of the tension, but Austin's watching this, just going, "What the fuck is going on?"
I would be so stressed. I could never pause it. I wouldn't be able to. And then I'd have to watch like the episode after to feel a little better about myself
Yeah.
because you end that feeling so unsafe.
Mhm,
It's crazy. And I haven't had that kind of feeling from a like a book or anything in a while. Like
mhm.
I did have to skip a page in Gerald's game. I had to skip a chapter. But it was because it was too gory and I was getting nauseous.
Mhm.
Like it wasn't because I was scared. It was just because I was grossed out. And those are
That's
two very
I've
different
done that
things.
with some I don't know how to pronounce Palionuk, I think is how you pronounce it. The Fight
Okay.
Club guy.
Right.
A couple of his books, I've had to skip some stuff because I'm just like, one, it's gratuitous. And
Yeah.
and two, it's just gross. There it really there some like some of
Yeah.
it that's the point, but some of it it's like
Oh,
you're just there because
100%.
like that's just you're just throwing it in there because that's kind of what you're known for at this point.
And like for Gerald's game, it made sense.
Mhm.
It did. I just was like, okay, I get it. I'm good. I understand.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to. I can't do it. My hands were feeling like I could. My hands were tingling. I was like, oh no, I
The
hated it.
I recently shut off I shut off Fear Street. I don't know if you've
I
seen.
love Fear Street. Those movies are so fun.
So I
They're
shut
so
off
fun.
part 2.
Okay, the 70s one.
Right. I shut it off because it was dark. I was home alone. Not it wasn't like scary, it was gross, and not in a gory way. It's where they realize that they're underneath
The
the
bathroom?
the bathroom. And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want to watch this right now. I'm gonna wait until I'm like it's another time. I was like, this is disgusting, and I
Oh,
don't want to
it
watch.
doesn't end up being as gross. It doesn't. It's not like anybody like does a poo or
I
anything.
think it was just it was so close to like I was watching this in the middle of the night, and I was just like, I'm about to go to bed. I don't want this to be in my head right now.
I don't want to think about being underneath a toilet.
It's,
I love
uh,
that I just said, "Don't worry, nobody does a poo on."
but
No
okay.
one's doing a poo.
All right.
Now I've said
So
it 3 times.
you all right. You have gone from he's gotten all of his tools back.
He has all
Uh
of his tools,
you've at
and he was
least been
feeling a little
introduced to
lost.
Unity.
Yes, Unity Kincaid has been. We went through. Well, so now I can spoil it. It's
Yeah.
fine. You get introduced to the concept of like a vortex,
Mhm.
and so, this is after Dream has all of his tools, and he's kind of like, no, I don't know what my new purpose is, and Dream's just like, you have a whole kingdom to rebuild, and like, also you could have called. I was worried about you. So he has a new sense of pep in his step, and he's like, "You're right. I have like things to do. How could I forget?" And then you are introduced to Rosie and her mom, and they're being sent to the UK by this attorney, and you find out that it's Rosie is Unity Kincaid's granddaughter, so she's meeting her biological granddaughter, but she's also trying to find her brother in the US. So she meets her grandmother, but her grandmother's sick, so Rosie's mom stays with Unity. She goes back to America to find her brother, um, who is currently in an abusive household and also being tormented by these two, like, dream things. It's
Brute
like
and Glob,
Brute
right?
and Glob.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how else to describe them other than Brute and Glob. They're kind of just like they're part of the dream world, and they're very mischievous, and they broke out while um Dream was kidnapped,
Right.
like a couple other. So basically, Dream saves the son, like the brother. That is a whole episode that happens, or a whole issue that happens. Dream also defeats another dream thing that broke out. Uh,
It's the
the
Corinthian.
coronation, the Corinthian, yeah, the
Yeah.
Corinthian. For 3 issues, I kept saying, "Yeah, his name's the coronation," and I was like, "I just didn't read." Like, it's the Corinthian. Who's been like basically having a bunch of serial killers fall in love with him. And kind of be inspired by him. So that was a whole thing. Rosie and Gilbert also somehow end up being entwined with serial killers because they're all at the same hotel while she's trying to find her brother. So that's kind of how that happens. And then you find out that Rosie is a vortex, which is somebody that eventually can tap into everybody's dreams at once and like mess with them. So he's like, I don't want to do it, but like, I'm gonna have to kill you because you are literally hurting millions and bajillions of people. And then she's like, well, this fucking sucks. And then you find out Unity Kincaid was supposed to be like the vortex, and she's like, I'll just sacrifice myself, like, here. And then
Mhm.
that works. And like, it sounds so bizarre, but I'm like, how does this make so much sense? um, but it's because she was supposed to be the vortex 70 years ago. If
Right.
Dream hadn't been kidnapped and she was unconscious for all that time. So that all happens. That's all well and good. You go back in time a lot, so you meet the eternal man, and they become like friends. It's
Hmm.
the guy from the Renaissance who doesn't die. Trying to think of what else happens. Like the main stuff about it. Yeah, that's kind of mostly it. And then there's a couple like one-off episodes, issue situations.
So you read?
Uh
I know you read Calliope, the A Dream of a Thousand Cats.
oh god, A Dream of a Thousand Cats. So good. That's another one of those like great one-off ones where it's just like you get so many more things to care about.
Hmm.
Like, and I cared about all of these cats. And I very much I own a cat right now too. And whenever I see him sleeping, I'm just like, I hope you get what you want. I really do. And just like learning about this one Siamese cat and her poor kittens, I was bawling. Um,
So
I
okay,
did the
what about?
Midsummer Night's Dream.
See, okay, this is a thing where for me, A Midsummer Night's Dream. I know it's not the best Shakespeare has ever written, nor does it make that much sense, but it is my favorite William Shakespeare play. And to see it as a Sandman um comic and the ways that it's like just thrown into the story, oh my, I was over the moon. I loved it. And that specific
Okay.
issue won a World Fantasy Award.
Which
Uh
is very cool. I
yeah.
gotta say, it was not at all my favorite issue.
It's fine. As an
And
issue,
like,
I was excited to see it
well,
more
that's good.
yeah.
I thought it was very cool to look at. I
Mhm.
really like the style of it. Um, and like they had brought Shakespeare up before, like in the Renaissance Man one, like you
Mhm.
do meet Shakespeare for the first time, and it is alluded that like he's made a deal with Sandman, and so because I knew Midsummer Night's Dream was going to be happening, I was like, oh, so this is like the deal he makes, or like something like that's going to be really cool to see that pay off like later. Um, and I started reading that issue and then I had to stop and I had to restart because I just like totally messed myself up. It was like weirdly hard to follow in a way because it's like you were I don't know, I just wasn't like super connected to Shakespeare. And then like he changed his like there were a lot of characters that changed their faces basically because it's like you did have men playing women. So I had and which is great. We love that. It was just when they put on their other costumes, it was like they were drawing a whole new person. And so then I was like, well, who's this guy then? And so I got really focused in on that and it really confused me. And then I was trying to you're trying to figure out also like why who is this audience? Why is this audience here seeing this play? 'Cause it's all other world people and stuff. And I don't know.
Are you
It just
have
didn't
you
grab me.
seen or read the original, the Shakespeare Midsummer Night's
I think I have.
Dream? It because I here's the thing. I don't think it really
Isn't it the
matters.
one where it's like there's like the wizard on the island with his daughter and he was or is that
So
a different one?
it's, A Midsummer Night's Dream is you have Titania and Oberon come to like the mortal realm basically, um, and they get into an argument, and Oberon, being the dick that he is, uh, has Titania. He like basically curses her to fall in love with this mortal, and then makes the mortal turn into a like part donkey.
A
So
donkey.
she
Yeah.
loves a jackass, and then it's just pure chaos until it all gets wrapped up at the end. Again, not great as a
Okay,
play, but just a lot of fun.
so I have not seen A Midsummer Night's Dream. What the heck have I seen? It was like okay, so what I thought I was supposed to be listening or watching. Oh my god, I think it was The Tempest. I think I was thinking of The Tempest the whole time. Oh no.
So
No wonder I
keep that
didn't like it.
keep that in mind, because the Tempest um also comes up. Like, Shakespeare is a
I
big
thought
deal.
I okay, I genuinely thought that I was supposed to be reading The Tempest because that's with Prospero
Yes. Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
his daughter and she falls in love with the prince who will become the king and they boat crash onto the island. That's what I thought I was supposed to be reading. Okay. Okay,
So
so I could have liked this more had
I
I
don't think
not
it changes.
been an
I think
idiot.
the chaos that is that issue is, I think, very perfectly mirrored in the play that they're actually putting on. It's
And
just like
I
the whole
liked
thing's a
all
mess.
the I liked the like little side comments of all like the little mythical like audience members. I thought
Mhm.
that was like fun because they're so cute and so goofy. They're like, can we eat them? And it's like, no, I think this is a play. It was just, I liked that. I thought that was cute. Or they'd be like, hey, that's supposed to be me. I don't like that depiction of me.
Mhm.
And then like the other ones are like, nah, but it's accurate. So I thought it was fun when it was that. But then I was just like, what the heck is this supposed to be? Okay, so but that's on me. That's not Neil's fault. That's my fault. I'm glad that got cleared up. Oh, but then the other thing I didn't like because part of me wanted it to end really tragically. I thought that uh Titania, I thought the woman
Titania, yeah, the
was Titania.
Lady Titania. Or I
I
mean, it
thought
might be
Lady
Titania, I don't know. I
I
watched the
don't know.
Titania.
Lady Titanium. I thought that she was going to take Shakespeare's son. I thought she was going to take him. And I really wanted that to happen because I thought Shakespeare was a dick. And like, I think he should pay. I feel like he hasn't really paid for his part of the deal yet. And I think the son is going to be like the check. I think that's what I thought it was going to be.
I I love
Maybe it
every
will be later.
I love
Um
listening to your theories.
it's
I
I
Okay,
mean, it's fun. I
before
like to
we
theorize.
before we continue on our voyage through what you've read,
Yeah,
a
again,
lo-
so sorry this is chaotic, but I guess it's on theme because this book is also chaotic. So
the
sorry, not sorry.
a theme that comes up quite a bit throughout the series is sort of reality as being shaped through belief,
Yes.
and whereas like most people view it as your dreams are shaped through like what you experience through reality, this kind of also takes it the opposite direction.
Yeah.
That being said, do you feel Cain and Abel were real people or were just ideas that were given life?
Oh, that's so interesting. I
I'm
don't
asking this
know.
because I don't think the book gives a solid answer.
Like, what do
I
I?
I
Sorry, my
think
cat's pushing the door closed. Uh,
for for me personally, I have always viewed it more as they were ideas given life, and that's part of why they have the contracts that they do. Um,
yeah, I think that because if at first I wanted to say I think it might have been like the Raven situation where it was like somehow they were given a deal when they both died. But thinking about it, I don't think that would have worked because Abel would have died first, obviously.
right.
So I think it would be very weird to have those very belated like those very time separate contracts for them or
Mhm.
like agreements, whatever you want it to be. So, but based off of like the things that they run, like they talk about how like they run like the penny dreadfuls and like all that stuff in the world basically. And they essentially are like the first horror story.
Mhm.
So like I think they probably are like one of the maybe not necessarily built by like the dream kingdom or anything,
Yeah.
but I think maybe they were just kind of created by their own thing, like this really small department by just like what I don't know if there's necessarily like God in Sandman if I think about it.
They
I
yes.
think there is
There
because
there
there's
is.
Lucifer and
I
they're like he's the fallen angel, but it's like
I'll
they
give
don't
you
really explicitly say God
I will tell you
and you don't see any angels. But also if it's connected to Constantine, I promise this thought ends.
yeah, no, you're fine. I'm trying I want to give you information without giving away too much too.
I I think I have now answered my own question that there is God in this book. Just
Mhm.
because if there is a Lucifer, like there, it only like makes sense background wise. If you're going that route for them, there to be like God and angels, we just haven't seen them yet in book one. Also, though, I know enough about Constantine to know that like there there are angels and like
Mhm.
demons and stuff. I mean, there's very clearly demons just from reading like the first four issues of it. So we just haven't seen angels yet. Maybe I'll see them in book two. I don't know. I haven't read it yet. Hopefully I'll read it soon, and then we'll have a more constructed second part to whatever this is. But yeah, I think that answered my question.
Yeah. So, I will say part of my question about Cain and Abel also comes up, and I feel like if you read the book, there is enough textual evidence for and against my feelings on it.
Yeah,
Which are that, you know, Cain and Abel are stories. Sort of the same with like Lucifer. Lucifer is a creature, a creature that exists, but
yeah,
doesn't necessarily mean that Lucifer didn't start out as a story. Or
yeah,
that Lucifer's history wasn't changed by, say, the changing beliefs in Christianity over the course of the last 2,000 years. uh,
yeah. And there is like a whole, like, you are right. There is a whole major theme of it being like, who runs this?
Yeah.
Is it people themselves, or is it these like eternal beings? Because like literally there's issues called like the dollhouse. And it focuses on like Rosie and all that stuff. I noticed it. I know literature to some extent of symbolism.
So when you
But
break
yeah, I
down
definitely noticed that.
the Sandman comics into story arcs, I
Mhm.
have the smaller collections. You have the bigger ones. The
Yes.
second volume is called The Doll's House, and it's what collects the story of
Of
Unity,
Rosie and
yeah, and Rosie, yeah.
Unity.
So that's like I'm kind of basing my understanding of where you are based on my shorter collections.
Yeah,
Uh,
so I've made it past the doll's house.
mhm.
Um,
And it sounds like you
Rosie.
made it through what would be considered Dream Country, which is more of those short stories like The Dream of a Thousand Cats and stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of when it gets a little confusing to describe where I am,
Hmm.
because it was a lot of kind of one-shotty moments with the cats. You know, it's cool that there's still some sort of full circle. Like there is still some, like, 'cause Shakespeare comes back and he was, alluded to in the past, which
Right.
was cool. It does seem like the hobgoblin thing will come back. Oh, and then it just immediately goes
Are you,
into,
were you talking about Puck from the little
yeah,
Robin
it does
Goodfellow?
seem like
Yeah.
Puck will come back at some point because he does just kind of disappear into the darkness. Um, there's the Richard Maddock thing with Calliope. Calliope. I can't
Calliope is
remember.
how I've always,
Calliope.
yeah.
That makes the most sense. I've
That's
been
just
saying
sort
it
of how I've
weird.
said it.
No, it sounds like it should. That should be how it is. Because the way I've been reading it in my head sounds very silly. Um. So yeah, that was a one shot story. So I guess I've read like what you have as like three pieces.
So that would mean, if I'm understanding where you are, the next story you're going to start is called Season of Mists.
Okay, cool.
Um, and a lot of some of what you have brought up comes back, and like
Yay! I love when
especially
that happens.
in terms of ideas and maybe a character or two. So I'm interested to see, especially once you read that, your thoughts on everything. uh
Yeah. Oh,
so
that's gonna be chaotic, but yeah,
i'm
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 excited.
guessing that's the start of your second book.
That'll be the start of my second book, yeah.
That
Because
makes a lot of sense. So Season of Mists is a great story. It's probably my second favorite of
gotcha.
the Sandman series. And it was the person who lent me the original series when I was first reading it through. It was his favorite, at least
Oh,
at the
okay.
time that he gave it to me. Which is interesting because my favorite is the following one, and it's called A Game of You.
Mm.
And it doesn't necessarily follow up on anything from Season of Mists. It just sort of picks up another plot thread and says, "Hey, let's follow this for a while." And it is so. A Game of You is one of the stories that Neil Gaiman has said that he wrote as a female led story.
Oh, cool.
Um, it is like he would say that this story was female, and I can definitely see it. And I really want your thoughts on A Game of You when when you get there, because
I will have more structured thoughts when that
no,
happens.
you're totally
I'm
the there is so much in Season of Mists and in A Game of You that I
Mhm.
think just those two alone, you could spend months talking about, especially in
Yeah.
terms of like content. Because as you're reading through it, you should keep in mind that these were published in 1990, 1991, and 1992. So you're just out of the 80s. And
Yeah.
some of what's in there I think was not being talked about or published about in
Oh, absolutely
mainstream
not.
anything. And
Yeah.
I think that lends a lot of, so when the Sandman was published originally, it was a weird comic book, not just by like what was on the page, but because it was one of the first comic books to
Well,
establish a huge female readership.
and it also like it does bring up like LGBTQ, like very briefly, but it is very cool. Um, in that diner issue is I think her name's
Yes.
like June or something, Julie.
I think it's Julie.
I think it's
Um,
Julie, and she does come back. She gets mentioned later on because, which is
uh,
another cool thing. It, I like
Judy.
how he Judy. Yes, I like how he loosely connects like parts, like
So that's
part
the
one to part two to part three. I like that. I think that's cool. Because it does kind of show that like all these lives do mean something, but it's also you can see how small the connection is in such a big world that this like guy thing has to deal with. Because Judy gets mentioned again by Rosie at like the very end of the dollhouse, being just like, tried to call my friend um back because she was really worried that she had broken up with her girlfriend and she was like really sad about it, but I like never got to like answer it or whatever. You get to learn a lot about Judy in the diner issue. I thought that that was really cool that you have this cool, complex woman who's also gay, and you're also showing her having friends that care about her. And I thought that that was really cool, especially if it was from like the early 90s. I thought it was in the late 80s. But
Yeah, no,
I just thought
the
that was really cool
where
and like
you're reading
very ahead of its time.
where you're reading is the late 80s.
Yes. Okay. That's what I thought.
Season of Mists and A Game of You are they were published over the next like 3 years in and so that would
In
have
the
been like
90s.
90 to like 92. Um and I will leave it at that because I'm worried about saying too much.
That's
I'm
fair.
again, it's this is my favorite comic book. A Game of You is my favorite story in my favorite comic book.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on stuff that I can talk forever about.
Yeah, I'm
um,
excited to get more into it. I like how this is broken up where it's like him getting back on his feet to then just like doing a big job and then doing a bunch of small jobs. It's cool. I think it really like shows you the world that's being built in a very like tied up in a nice neat chaotic bow. I like it a lot. It's very good.
it's interesting
Big
to
fan.
come off of recording 3 episodes on Batman and such a wild, fun ride of bonkers storytelling to something that I think is just as bonkers, but in a very different way.
Yeah, I feel like it makes more sense. This one has like a different kind. It has like a whimsical weird to it,
Hmm.
where the other one has kind of just a psychotic weird to it.
Well,
Like
there's
that
like
one, yeah,
I think the Batman one is how you can have like your dark and fun storytelling while still heavily leaning into camp, and you get a
yeah,
lot of that in Batman, whereas I feel like the Sandman comic is a lot less camp but still just all of the weirdness.
yeah. It's kind of just like weird gothic,
Yeah.
and I like that a lot. I am a very like sunshine appearing of human being, but I like my gothic like weird stuff.
Hmm.
So this is like this is a good shoe that fits, and I'm gonna keep putting it on.
I'm very excited to see your thoughts as you get further into the series. So we're definitely going to have to do another one. where we talk about
Okay. I
when
will
you,
make sure to take notes that time.
I guess when you finish the second book, that'll be a good time to check back in. I'm assuming it'll be Season of Mists, A Game of You, and maybe uh, what comes after A Game of You? I don't even remember. um,
No clue.
and maybe Fables and Reflections. Probably not because that one's really long.
Yeah.
So it might just be Season of Mists and A Game of You. So I'm definitely looking forward to talking to you at least about those two because there's so much that we can go over just
Yeah.
within those two stories. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me about this.
Thanks for letting me go on the most psychotic rambling of my lifetime.
I had a lot of fun.
I mean,
There are
that's
fewer
good. I
things
did too.
there are fewer things that I enjoy more in life than um talking to people I care about things that they care about. And especially
I
if it's
had
something
such a
I care
great
about
time.
too. There's like
Because I literally, my brain was just like, I would be reading something and I'd be like, I gotta put a post-it note on this because I gotta be able to talk about it later. And then I didn't have any post-it notes, and I was just like, I will remember because of how much I love this thing. And then it all turned into like, it was just like I was making a sand castle. So I just kept putting a bunch of sand in this bucket that is my brain. And then I just, instead of like packing the sand in, I just immediately dumped it out and was like, here's all my thoughts. And that's how this felt. It was great. And then I got hot cocoa in the middle, and it was very nice. So,
that sounds good.
all in all, great recording.
I think we'll come back with a I was gonna say more structured, but actually probably not. We're gonna come back with a brief overview of a 4-year long story that most people would know, especially anyone who's slightly interested in comics has probably heard of the Clone Saga, Spider-Man's second Clone Saga, actually, and the one that lasted for far too long and is widely considered one of the worst missteps in comic book history. You and I are going to do a deep dive
We're going to find out
into
why we like it. We're going to find a way to like it. And we're going to be like, here are the things that are super cooked about this. But then here's 3 reasons why I like it.
Well, I've started my notes on this, and I can tell you I've already found a couple of things that I was like, oh hey, I
That's
didn't
good.
realize this is where this came from. So we're definitely gonna have a little bit of fun with that, and I think that's gonna
Yeah.
be just as chaotic and weird because holy
I'm
shit,
excited.
there's no way to do a script or anything for this. It's just gonna be
Forget a script.
notes on a bad story that we're gonna dive
That we're
into
going
over
to
the
make
course of
good.
like 48 episodes that are gonna down the line.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Yeah. So I guess you can find more information, including, well, not really any sources for today's episode because it's just a
my
chat
brain.
between the two
Just
of us.
my brain and my heart.
Go out and buy Sandman. I read the comic book, watch the show. It's a good show, but read the comic book. I personally think it's a better comic book, even though I very much enjoy the show. But you can find more information about us and some of the things that we're going to be talking about at comicallypedantic.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram by searching at pedanticast and at Derek L. Chase on both platforms. New episodes will be coming out most Sundays on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and at comicallypedantic.com. If you have any comments or questions, especially if they relate to the Clone Saga, because holy shit, we're gonna have so much time to talk about the Clone Saga.
Yeah.
You can send them in text or audio recording to comicallypedantic@gmail.com. And please indicate if you'd like your name or question read on the air. We will be back soon with a deep dive into the Clone Saga, the culture of comics, and another update on Sandman at some point. But until then, you can find more exciting adventures at your local comic shop.